Appamada and its programs are supported by your generosity, and your generosity and support makes such a difference. You can find a link for contributions on the website at appamada.org. Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. Today we have the pleasure of having John Eric offering his way-seeking mind talk. So I'll turn it over to you, John Eric.
Thank you. Just my view here. It's really good to see you all. I'm so grateful that you're here. And Maria just sent me a chat and said, remember, you're among friends and family. And I really do feel that way. Really sweet to be here. And I remember when I first saw Way Seeking Mind Talk, it was Rupesh, and I thought, I'm never doing that. Which I've learned to try not to say in this practice, because here we are. And I'm glad to be offering this. I really kind of struggled with this talk for a while, I think, because I wanted to offer something. I felt like all of these years of seeking and my spiritual practices should mean something, should come down to something. And I was really kind of, fretting around like, well, what is it? Like, what did I learn? What can I offer? What's the answer? And after I let that go, I realized that, well, first of all, I don't have any answers. I have learned some things, but I have more questions than anything, I think. But what I was feeling was a sense of care. I really just wanted to offer something to you, my family and my community and my friends. And then I just kind of took a step back and realized, like, that's what I was feeling. I was feeling care for everyone. And that's what I've really learned, especially from Appamada, which means mindful energetic care, of course. But I don't know, it was kind of a cool realization just to see, like, oh yeah, that's what it's about. That's actually what it's about. So that's really the end of my talk. And now that I've given away the end, I'll start at the beginning. It's funny, Robin, who's here, who's on my council, she brought in the Lojong phrase this week, which was begin at the beginning and end at the end. So I think that's good advice. So I'm from Austin, and only child. My dad, who's here, and my mom. I guess kind of the context I was raised in with my family of origin. I would say we were not patently agnostic, but I would say that's kind of the context of my family system, my family of origin. My mom was very spiritual, but very kind of engaged in nature and the natural surroundings. And when people asked her what church she went to, she'd say to the Church of Zilker Park, which is a big park here in Austin, if you're not in Austin. And she was very spiritual, but very, she was very engaged in her, some part of her lineage is Blackfoot, indigenous peoples. And she was very connected to that lineage. And my dad had some difficulties with the church as a young person, and I think that was part of the this kind of we didn't go to church as a family, but it wasn't like we weren't like against church or anything like that. It just wasn't really like something that we did. So I was born into this. Even though I struggled with that from time to time, I'm really so grateful that I had this kind of fertile ground to explore from. And both my parents were always super supportive of me and all of my explorations and all of my questions and everything. So I'm very, very grateful for that starting point. A little bit further up, my great-grandfather, my mom's grandfather, was a Reformed LDS minister in Missouri. And my grandfather, my dad's dad, was a very devout Episcopalian, and he was an architect, very prominent architect, and he built mostly churches in Austin and San Antonio. So that's kind of some of the family history, some of the spiritual history. And yeah, I was always really glad that I didn't have to go to church on Sundays as a kid, because I wanted to sleep in. I always thought I kind of had an edge on that, which didn't take, because here we are on Sunday, and I often get up very early, so that didn't turn out to be long term. And in first grade, I went to St. Martin's to school, which is a church in downtown Austin. And I was really into science. Like my whole life, I've always been into science and nature and discovering new things. And I remember when my parents tell the story of them getting called into parent-teacher conference because they were teaching about creationism. And I stood up and I said, I think it's actually about evolution. And I started talking about dinosaurs and all this kind of stuff. And they were like, well, you know, maybe don't bring that forward in this class. But that was really my where my curiosity started, was with nature and with science and things like that. So I've always been fascinated with the natural world. I've always loved animals. I've always loved nature. I always loved being outside. When I was 11, I got a job at a pet store not too far away. And so on Saturdays, my parents would take me to my job at the pet store, and I'd work all day, and I was too young to get paid money. So they paid me in animals and cages and food and things like that. So my room was like it was like an exhibit. There were like aquariums and turtles and lizards and snakes and hamsters and all these kinds of things. I just loved it. And I still kind of have this kind of fascination with nature and animals, and really see them as a gateway to another consciousness. I just find them very, very interesting and have a deep care for them. And then when I was in middle school, I volunteered at the Austin Nature Center, which used to be where Deep Eddy is now. And I went to Henry Middle School, and I would walk after school and go play with the animals and take care of the coyotes or whatever they had rescued. And I loved that very much. And really that was my primary connection to my spiritual self, was through nature and through animals. A little bit later, went to Austin High School down the road from O. Henry, and had a great group of friends. And one of my friends invited me to attend Young Life, which, if you're not familiar with Young Life, it's a Christian organization. I think non-denominational. I don't know, but it's kind of a social thing in a way to get people engaged in the church life. And it was really good. It was really good socially. I had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. But I kind of felt like, because I wasn't raised in that tradition, that I kind of felt like people were talking about something I didn't quite understand when they were talking about Jesus and the Bible. And I saw people having this they talked about this personal connection to Jesus. And I got really interested in that. I was like, what is this about? You know, and I would say that's when my religious seeking really began, because I was really compelled by this, like, what is this that people are experiencing? And so I started getting really pretty active in Young Life, and reading the Bible, and just reading it on my own, and then asking questions and things. And I would say that's when I really started studying different religions and traditions, and really started having a heart towards, like, what is out there, what's greater than me, like where do I come from, that sort of, these kinds of questions. And so kind of in that backdrop of those two things, when I was around 16, I had an experience outside that really kind of changed my life. I was hiking at a friend of the family's land out in the hill country. It's beautiful, beautiful land, and I was by myself, and I hiked up this ridge and turned around and saw this most beautiful vista. Like, it was just a gorgeous day. It was like blue skies and trees and mountains, and it just filled me, and I felt the sense of oneness with creation. And it's what I now call like samadhi or something. It just was like everything was right with the world, and I felt this connection to something larger than me. It was completely unexpected. And I remember walking around the property by myself, kind of in this state. And I went down, I found this little stream, and it was like super idyllic, and I drank the water, and it was like, so wonderful. And and I looked up, and there was this armadillo, like this pretty big armadillo just looking at me. And I looked at it for probably like 5 minutes. We just like regarded each other, just had this like moment, me and this armadillo. And it just, I don't know, it was just something, it was like a new part of me opened up from that moment. And I'll always remember that time, that moment, still very vivid memory. But really it was that sense of nature and animals and that sort of thing that I think really like just kind of spoke my language while I was trying to figure out this, kind of religious teaching and what it was all about. So then a few more years later, I went to college at Southwest Texas, now Texas State in San Marcos. And I had this period of time where I was kind of adrift around 18, 19. I quit going to school. I was slacking off. I probably should have taken a gap year, but I didn't. And, I was not working, just kind of couch surfing and really just adrift, around that age. And also struggling quite a bit because of that. And, was dealing with depression at times and just trying to, figure out like, what am I doing? And I was at a party at least some people's house on Lake Austin, and they were kind of friends, but not really. It was just kind of a crowd of people. I was just kind of there, and I remember I was just feeling so down, and I walked out on the pier by myself. It was at night, and I was just looking out across the water, and something about the way the moon was shining down on the waves of the water. I again had this kind of moment, this like oneness with nature and with creation, and I just had this feeling like it's all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay, and I just it's inexplicable. It's hard to describe, but it was a real turning point for me. I got up. I walked through the middle of the house. I didn't say anything to anybody, and I got in my car and I drove off. Never saw those people again. They weren't bad people. They just weren't really they weren't really my friends. And then I went back to school and started studying again. And I got really serious about school and thought I would be, because I have such an interest in science. I wanted to study pre-med, and which was way overshooting my academic history so far, but it was my interest. And I was so fascinated by it. And then I, kind of the next milestone in my spiritual journey, I would go through the stacks in the library and I would read medical journals, and I would read about like surgical procedures and all these different things. It was just so fascinating. And I was just like in heaven with all these books. And I remember I picked up this one book about the human eye and the visual system. And I was reading it, and I was so captivated and struck by the complexity of what it takes to see, with the lens and the retina and the fovea and the optic chiasm and the optic nerve and the optic occipital cortex and the brain. And it just, I knew there had to be something greater. We're not just here by mistake. It was just like, I like so intricate. It was the intricacy of of what I was reading was so beautiful. And I've heard this is kind of a gateway to believing or whatever for some other people too, is that the visual system for some reason, just because it's so intricate. And that was another opening for me, which was interesting because I was coming through a different pathway. It wasn't through nature. It was through my mind and through study, and something that really just like, wow, okay. And then I was like, okay, there is a God, there is something out there. There's an intelligence here that's greater than me. And I was like, okay, I'm going into this religion thing full force. I'm ready. And I went down to the Episcopal Church there in St. Mark's, and started studying with them and said, I'm ready to be baptized. I hadn't been baptized. And they were like, okay, read these books and come back in 2 weeks. The bishop will be here and they will baptize you. I was like, okay. I was super excited, and was reading, and 2 weeks came and went. We didn't have email back then, so I had to walk down there. It was like 3 weeks later or something like that, and I was like, well, what's going on? It's been 2 weeks. And they said, oh, they already left. They came and left. I was like super crushed. I was just like devastated, because I was just jumping in. I was like, I'm ready to do this. And something about that just felt really disheartening to me. But I was still in this kind of searching mindset, and I don't remember how much longer, maybe a few weeks or a couple months. I was still at school, living in the dorms, and I met this guy. He was a friendly guy in my class named Osman. And we met, we got along like super well. We just started hanging out, and we ended up rooming together in a dorm. And he was gone at one point, and I was looking through his drawers or something for a pencil or something like that, and I found the Quran. And I was like, what is this? I had no clue what that was at all. And I remember looking at it, I put it back kind of sheepishly, like, I found something, I shouldn't have. But he came back in, and I asked him about it, and he said, oh, it's my Quran. I'm a Muslim. And I was like, what is that? I had no real idea what that was. And he started telling me about it, about he was born a Muslim, and he was telling me about it, and I became fascinated by what he was sharing with me. And I had no idea that this religion even really existed. I didn't know there was another Abrahamic religion aside from Judaism and Christianity. And we stayed up till 2, 3 in the morning, several nights in a row, talking about Islam and what it was all about. And something about it really captured me in that moment. It had so many answers and so much structure. And it was like, you pray 5 times a day, you observe these things, and this is what it is, and it was like, and it kind of brought together this Christian tradition and the Judaic tradition with this new context. And kind of like I do when I get fascinated with something, I just poured myself into it. And I read the Quran front to back, and I read what are called hadiths, which are like stories about Muhammad. And I got super into it, and it just, I don't know, it really filled something in my life at that time. I was really, again, kind of coming out of this struggling phase. And so I converted to Islam. I became a Muslim. And I was at 20, went to the mosque here in Austin, the Islamic Center on New Oasis, and told my friend Osman and some other friends I had made that I was ready. And they were like, okay, come on Friday. It was like, tomorrow kind of thing. And then I'd never been to that mosque before. The mosque in St. Marcus was very small. And there were like maybe 100 people there. And I just turned around and stood in front of everybody and said this proclamation of faith in Arabic that they read to me, and I read it back. And the outpouring of care and like excitement for me, because I was like this new convert coming into this thing, was overwhelming. Like people were hugging me, they were like inviting me to dinner, they were like, just super excited about me, and that was my first experience of what Sangha was like for me. And it really filled a need that I've been looking for. Like, wow, I belong. I'm taking this new exciting path, and it was just like, wow, I felt like I'd really found something, unique. And I remember being asked to come give a talk at UT at the student union. I think it was like a multicultural day or something like that. And I got up and I spoke. It was kind of like this, kind of like a way seeking mind talk, but back then to becoming a Muslim. And I got up in front of everybody and shared my story. My parents were there, and they were, I think maybe a little perplexed, I don't know, but very supportive again, which I'm so grateful. I mean, that could have totally been not the case, because it's kind of an unusual step to take. But yeah, I was a practicing Muslim for about 2 years, and observed fairly regularly, praying 5 times a day and fasting during Ramadan and all these kinds of things. But it started to kind of slip for me a little bit over the years. It was like the newness of it wore off, and the rules, which are numerous, became a little too much for me. And then there were some cultural things didn't quite fit. Like there's some people in that community who were fairly like hardliner Orthodox, and they would say things to me like, you're dressing too American, or like, like I had an earring at the time. They're like, you should take that out. You look too American or whatever. I was like, well, it's what I am. It's like, and then I had this really what was kind of so I still have a very deep place in my heart for Islam and for Muslims and that sort of thing. But as far as like I did step out of that religion and that way of worship. And what kind of was the defining point for me was I had this conversation with this guy who was really kind of extreme, and he was basically telling me that anyone who's not a Muslim is going to hell. And I was like, wait, I didn't think that was a part of this. And he was like, no, yeah. And I was like, so my parents are going to hell because they're not Muslims? He's like, yeah, I'm afraid so. And I was like, well, that's bunk. I'm not into this anymore. It's not my jam. So I left that community. I'm still very good friends with my friend Osman, and still know some people from that community, and very friendly and everything. But I don't observe that any longer. But so at that point, I was again kind of adrift a little bit, I guess. I was still seeking, and I came across. I was working at a furniture store in San Antonio in a mall, which is not as glamorous as it sounds. And there was a bookstore next door, and I had a lot of free time, and I picked up a copy of the Tao Te Ching, just out of curiosity. And I read it. I opened the first page, and it says, "The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao." And I was like, "What is that?" Wow. It was like the antithesis of this kind of like ideology, this kind of like thing that has all the answers. And I was like, this is really interesting. And I read it. I carried it around with me. It was pocket sized. And then I read the Tao of Physics. I don't know if you guys have ever read that, but that is a phenomenal book that weds science with Eastern religions and teachings, Taoism, and all kinds of other things. And I was just like, yeah, this is it. This is really cool. And so then I met Jessica, fast forwarding quite a few years, 1996, met Jessica, and we met at a plant nursery here in Austin, the Pink Flamingos plant nursery, if you guys have been here a long time. And one of the things we really bonded on was our spirituality. We both had this seeking heart. And we just, among other things, it was one of the things we really talked about a lot was this kind of like seeking. And she comes from a Christian background, and I been studying that and everything. I had a lot of questions. She knew and knows a lot more about that than I do still. But we would stay up till 2 a.m. talking about the Bible and Jesus and things like that. And so we just really bonded around that. And let's see. So then she went to Texas State with me, and we went to college together, which was awesome. As a young married couple going to school, sitting next to each other in physics class. And then I completed my degree in psychology, and we moved back to Austin in 2000. A couple of years later, we had a baby, Emily, she's on the call. She's now 19. But that was a real spiritual experience, watching her be born, I can say, because it's all very, conceptual, having a baby until it happens. And then there she was, and like there's this being comes from nothing to something, and it kind of looks like you, and it's looking at you, and it's just like, wow. It was like mind-blowing experience, like super spiritual experience, watching her be born. And I remember just carrying her down the hallway, and all of our family was there, just like, my eyes were like this big. I was like, look at what happened, and that was a huge opening for me. And so then now we're a young family, and I started working in tech kind of really earnestly, and then got a position in Seattle. So we all moved to Seattle, and actually moved back to Austin for a short time, then moved back to Seattle. We were there for about 7 years in total. But that was kind of I was really focused on making a living and excelling in my career, and really just focused on work at that time, work and family. And so my spiritual seeking was kind of placed on hold. Was happy and fulfilled, but didn't have any kind of like spiritual like juice there for me. And then Jessica, as Emily got older and went to school, Jessica started studying yoga, and took yoga teacher training at a place called 8 Limbs Yoga in Seattle, which is a wonderful yoga studio, very steeped in like actual yoga, like actual yoga teachings and the philosophy and everything. And it was really something that really drew her really deeply. And I was kind of interested in it, but more as like an exercise class here and there, just because I was really just kind of thinking about my job. But happy for her that she was finding this community and a new path. And that changed for me when we went on a retreat together in Orcas Island, which is just outside of Seattle. My mom flew up there and watched Emily so that we could do this. I think it was a 3 or 4 day retreat where we were learning from this man named James Bode. Another friend had kind of sponsored from Mysore, India. He's an Englishman, but he at that time was living in Mysore and studying very deeply. And he's a yogic scholar and a Sanskrit scholar. And I had no idea about any of that stuff, but here we are at this retreat learning from this man, James, and he shared kirtan, which is like singing, devotional singing, bhakti yoga, which is like devotional yoga, Indian mythology, like all these stories about, Shiva and Vishnu and, the Ramayana and all this kind of stuff. And it just was like, wow, I didn't realize how dried up I had been spiritually until I met this guy and heard what he was sharing. And I was like, okay, I get it. This yoga thing is pretty cool. There's a lot more to this than I thought. And then I got really into yoga and studying with James in particular. He's still one of our primary teachers. And his lineage is yoga in general, but also Kashmiri Shaivism, which is a tantric tradition from Kashmir. And that's really what his lineage is. And it's actually something that informs our Buddhist practice as well. Some of the teachings from Kashmiri Shaivism Buddhism was spreading from India up into China and Chan, and the Silk Road went through Kashmir. And so some of those teachings, especially the Vajrayana path. But anyway, there's some similarities there that are familiar. Very rich tradition. Still very interested in those teachings. Talks a lot about Shiva and Shakti as symbols of form and formlessness, and the dualities there, and very rich teaching. And I'm actually in a men's group with James currently. He's in kind of all around the world, but anyway, still connected with James. And so that kind of like woke me back up spiritually, I think, yoga and that sort of thing. And then around that time, I was working at Microsoft. I was working as a contractor. They offered me a really great full-time position. And it was a great opportunity and great benefits and all these things. We were also looking for a home to buy in Seattle. It was a very hot market at the time. And so I was given this job offer. We were about to buy a house, and it was like just out of our reach, like just barely going to be a kind of hard to do. And the job paid just enough to where it was like there was a little thin margin there. And I remember the recruiter telling me, here's your benefits and stuff. And when she was like, here's what we call the golden handcuffs. It's you get, and I don't remember exactly the deal, but it was like, if you stay here 10 years, your stock will vest, you'll get these benefits and everything. And I was like, wow, this is a 10-year thing working at Microsoft in tech. And my heart was kind of crying out, like saying, please don't do this, and even though it was a good opportunity, I turned it down, and really just was kind of, I was eschewing this kind of materialistic way that I've been living my life for so many years, chasing a career and trying to make money and all these kinds of things. And so, with some conversation and struggle in the family, or, some discussion around it, we decided that we were going to leave our life in Seattle and do something different. And we talked about a lot of different options, maybe going to Europe and working on an organic farm or something like that. We decided to buy an Airstream, which we did. So we bought a large Airstream, a new one, and a truck to pull it. And we sold almost everything, left our house, and the three of us, me and Jessica and Emily, which I think she was about 11 at the time, got in the Airstream and lived on the road for 6 months. And it was an amazing experience. And our idea was, let's find some land and get back to nature and work the land. And that was what we were going to do. And so Emily was in homeschool, and we just drove around. We drove probably a little too far, too fast. I was kind of excited about it. We circumnavigated the country pretty much twice. Seattle all the way through Texas to the East Coast, back up to Seattle, and then back through California, in 6 months. Ended up back in Austin, and which I never thought we would do at that point. And we stayed at, we didn't have a house at that point, so we stayed at Pecan Grove, which is off of Barton Springs, kind of an iconic RV park right there in the middle of everything. And we lived there for at least a whole summer. We were there for like 3 months. And around that time, and we didn't know what we were going to do. And my parents lived in Lockhart. They moved from Austin to Lockhart at that point too. And I think we stayed with them some in the Airstream as well. Jessica reconnected with her good friend Rupesh, who was at Appamada at that time, and introduced her to Appamada. And she would get up, and I think she was kind of struck by it at the time. And she would get up in the morning, ride her bike to Barton Springs, and then ride over to Appamada and sit in the mornings. And that was kind of her routine. And I was kind of mildly interested in that. Oh, I kind of skipped a thing. While we were in Seattle, I was starting to get interested in Buddhism, and I went and checked out Shambhala. I think we went together to check out Shambhala in Seattle. And we did one sitting period, but it was so musty in the basement with the carpet that it was like, I can't come back here. So that was a one-time trip. Seattle can get that way sometimes. Anyway, so I had this like a little bit of interest in what Buddhism was about, but not to a great degree. But I was kind of hearing from Jessica about Appamada and Peg and Flint and everything there, and she was getting a lot out of it. So I wasn't sitting yet. I don't think I'd ever even gone to Appamada. And then we got a house in Austin, started working again, and then around 2015, I had a real spiritual crisis. Just everything was kind of falling apart. We had a new office in downtown. We had 10 full-time employees in our business suddenly, and my mom was getting ill with long-term illness, and it was just like everything was just like falling apart at once. And I just was like, it was as what often brings us to this practice. I was in a crisis, and I was like, I'm gonna go talk to Peg. Having never sat at Appamada before, or maybe once, I don't know, but I signed up for a practice discussion with Peg, and I went into the Dokusan room and sat across from her. It was just like this energy. It was like I'm sitting face to face with Peg. It's just like, wow. And I shared with her what was happening, and I was just kind of like bereft, and like what am I gonna do? And she just calmly said, "This will be a liberating experience for you." I'm like, I had no idea what she was talking about. She said, just come back and sit. Just come back and sit. Come back in the morning and sit at Appamada. And I was like, okay, I'll try it. And I think I kind of fumbled my way along. I came back maybe the next morning, and made a lot of mistakes. I didn't do orientation, which I should have, but I just showed up. And I think I walked into the Zendo while she was giving her vows at the altar, and she kind of looked at me like, "What are you doing?" And I went and sat down, all like embarrassed and ashamed, and didn't know what was happening. And anyway, I kept coming to Appamada, and not long after that, Flint was giving a inquiry. Well, first of all, I saw inquiry for the first time, and that blew my mind. I'd never seen anything like that before. I'd never heard someone talking like that before about, Hakomi and, all of his influences, IFS and that sort of thing. And I just kind of like, I think the next inquiry, I just jumped up there, like sitting in front of him. He was kind of like, yes, he'd never met me before. And I was like, I'm struggling, I'm suffering, I don't know what to do. And he just said, follow your breath and keep sitting. It's like, okay, thank you. And went and sat down, and was starting to get a feel for what Appamada was about. It was still pretty new. And then there was an intensive offered at Red Corral Ranch, residential intensive, and I signed up for it, having very little practice. And I went, and I remember showing up it was in the hill country somewhere. I can't remember where now, but I remember Jessica and Emily dropped me off with my luggage at the little front stand thing, and they drove away, and I was like, oh my God, I'm stuck here. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what I'm doing. And I was just like, I wanted to run in that moment. And just then, I think it was Todd Bankler showed up and gave me a ride to the cabin where he and I were rooming together. I'd never really met him before. And I was still like kind of panicking, like, I don't know what's going to happen. And then the intensive began. I had a job. I was one of the cook's assistants, and there were Dharma talks. There was a lot of sitting, and everything that I had been dealing with was like really coming on heavy. And it was just like, man, I just felt like I was on fire, to sit there. And it was just such a struggle. But what shifted for me, maybe 3 or 4 days into the experience of it being so painful and difficult, was we started doing some practice discussion groups with each other. And I started realizing what Sangha was about. I had no idea what Sangha was about. And I was like, here are these people I've been sitting with in silence for days and days and days. And now we were talking about stuff and like really sharing with each other. And it started to shift for me. I was like, oh, Sangha. Yeah, I think I know what this is, you know? And it was just like, huh, that's what this is about, you know? It's like, okay. And again, it was another opening for me, you know, just like coming into this practice and learning like, oh, we're actually doing this for each other. Oh, that makes sense. And so that I'm so grateful for that experience. I'm so grateful that I often just jump into things without thinking about it, because it was really brought me in deeply into the teachings and the Dharma and Sangha, and I kept coming back. Ever since, I guess. And in addition to my sitting practice at Appamada back then, it was 2017 or so, I started kind of dipping into Sufism a little bit. So I was, you know, still had this kind of lineage of Islam, and I was sitting, or not sitting, but going to worship at there's a little Sufi center here in Austin, actually at the Unitarian Church, I think. Anyway, that I kind of dipped in with the Sufi group for a little while, dipped my toes in it, and then stopped going there, because again, it wasn't just really my jam, but really nice people. And then I found this, I think Jessica maybe found it, but this conference that's held in San Jose called the Science and Non-Duality Conference, or SAND. And I went to that, and it was like the Tao of Physics book in real life. And it was the most incredible experience to discover that there are scientists, like leading edge quantum physicists and biologists and geneticists and all these things, intermixing with these spiritual teachers like Adyashanti and Deepak Chopra, and you know, all these people were like there together at this conference, and it was just like, wow, another incredible opening for me. And Jessica and I went to the conference together. It's not being held any longer, but that was just another thing. It was like, again, bringing this like my science interest together with spirituality. Really interesting group of people. And then in 2015, I think, kind of skipping around a little bit, but Jessica did a Hakomi training here in Austin, and that was a very deep experience for her. And I experienced a lot of what I call collateral Hakomi, being her husband while she was going through the process. And you know, it's just such a wonderful practice, one of Flint's lineages, as you know, in NPEG. And that experience of watching her go through this reignited my interest in psychology, which was always my root passion kind of thing. And then I took the training, the Hakomi training. It's a 2-year intensive training. And a lot of people at Appamada have taken this training as well. But that really changed my life. I always say that there's me before Hakomi and there's me after. And it's like the way I see life and everything is so different after experiencing what Hakomi is. And we're now Hakomi practitioners. And it's just a beautiful spiritual practice, I think, of being with people in that way. Let's see. And then in 2018, I joined the board at Appamada. I think maybe some of y'all know me from the board. And then let's see. Well, so I joined the board, then I became the board president after Joan. She was such a wonderful person to learn from, and Robin was always so wonderful on the board. I'm so grateful for the people I worked with on the board. Just you guys and Mitch, and I mean, just y'all are just such incredible people and so talented. And I remember, you know, before the pandemic really started, you know, it was kind of it was just kind of like, you know, we would meet and talk about finances and that sort of thing. And then COVID happened, and it was like, wow, everything really took off. You know, it's like, you know, Flint had moved to Hawaii, and then you know, the Zendo was shut down, and then Peg decided to move back with her family, and it was like, what do we do with the house? And that became my real practice at Apamato was working on the board with the other board members. It was a beautiful practice, and I've always been interested in the intersection of like business and spirituality, and that really kind of met that need for me, like how to be in that kind of position in a spiritual seat, and super grateful for that opportunity. And then I left the board and last spring, and now Nate is the president, and yeah, just so grateful for them. They're still doing such great things. And now I'm on council 2, which I'm very happy to be there, council member. Let's see, now I'm catching up to present day, what's going on. I'm meeting with my men's group online. We formed during COVID, and I have this wonderful group of guys from around the world, Pacific Northwest and Ibiza and England, and like all these guys, and we've gotten really close, and we haven't all met in person yet, but we meet like every other week for 3 hours, something like that. So that's another community that I have that was kind of unexpected benefit of COVID. And like I said, Jess and I are still practicing Hakomi. We're actually starting a new organization called Hakomi Austin, which will be a way to kind of help bring Hakomi forward in Austin, and yeah, just kind of a resource for people, a community for people. We really have like a kind of a parallel Hakomi Sangha of people here that we can, because we just believe in it so much. It's such a wonderful lineage. And I am starting graduate school in a month. I'm getting my master's. I'm endeavoring to get my master's in at Naropa University, based in Boulder, and it's a hybrid program, so I can stay here in Austin, and there'll be some intensives there in person in transpersonal mindfulness-based counseling psychology is the full title. So I'll have the ability to become a therapist, a licensed therapist, if that's what I choose to do. But I'm again coming back to my passion for psychology, and I've always wanted to get a graduate degree in it. So here I am, almost 50, going back to graduate school. Yeah, I think that's kind of my story up to now, and that's been my journey, and I'm so grateful for all of you wanting to hear this and witness this together. So thank you very much. Appreciate you all, and if we have some time for any questions or anything, if you want to know more or anything, I would welcome that.
Thank you, John Eric. Questions? Yeah, Neil.
First, thanks so much for sharing, John Eric. I know I got a lot out of that talk, and I'm sure a lot of other people did as well. But real quick, I don't know what Hakomi is. Could you give like a brief description of it?
Yeah, totally. It's a well, it's called a mindfulness-based body-based psychotherapy. So it was founded by a man named Ron Kurtz back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and it's a very Buddhist-informed modality of relating with people. So it's also called assisted self-discovery. So it's a way that I like to think of it as, it's almost like assisted meditation in a way. So, if I'm sitting in the role of the practitioner and you'd be the client or whatever, we would follow the body as a way to get at subconscious kind of patterns and beliefs and core beliefs you might be holding that you may not be aware of, that might be hindering you from growing into your life further. So there might be like something going on in your world, and we would look deeper together and hold that space together to say, like, oh, is there a memory there, or is there a bodily sensation there, or is there's something that leads to something else? And we kind of follow that together with curiosity and what we call loving presence to see what core beliefs might be there. Now bringing those to the conscious level can be worked with and held, and transformation might happen, or at least like that awareness that you may not have had before. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
That's a very long bumper sticker version of what
Kim has a question.
Yeah, I'm wondering to what extent you saw these different spiritual paths that you went on in contrast to each other, or were they like pieces of a puzzle that all fit together?
In a way, but I think I've kind of dropped the puzzle, because it's like I was saying, I think there's the teachings and the, I don't know, kind of the semantics of religions or spiritual paths, and there's like, how are we with each other? I'm much more interested in that these days, with the teachings as a foundation. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know about the puzzle so much anymore. I guess I'm at a point in my life, my path right now, where I'm kind of letting go of that a little bit, which might come back. I don't know. It's just kind of where I'm at right now. But thanks for asking, Kim.
Yeah, we have Rosemary.
Good to see you again.
Okay. Yes. Hi, John Eric. Thank you so much. I really appreciated the journey you just took us on, and especially that your search, your approach, your journey was very open to this and this, not this or this. So basically none this, you had this openness, and I really appreciate hearing about that. It's very refreshing and inspiring, that aspect of it. So thank you so much. Very rich. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I come forward? I'll come forward. Yeah, it's just really saying what Rosemary said. I found it really inspiring, and it's like the way you just kept searching and searching until something settled. Almost like something wasn't quite settled, something hadn't quite found its place, and it's like just following that journey as each part settles until you've come to a part where more is settled. And I could really feel that as you were going along and talking in your journey, and I just really found that inspiring, how you just kept going. You kept searching, and we keep searching, don't we? We keep going. But I think with where we're at now, it gives us that space, doesn't it? That space where everything can just land and be. And I can really, really see how you've gone through those steps and didn't give up, never give up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thank you, Maria.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, and I really have to, credit the practice of Zazen. It plays such a huge part in that settling. It's like the muddy water in a glass. It's like when you let it settle, you can see the clarity in the water. And like going through that intensive and all the days of sitting, just to like really just, I was afraid of being with myself for that long, which is, looking back at it now, it's kind of like, I can't imagine that I felt that way, but I did.
Yeah, and like with the practice of sitting, it's like we get to actually be with ourselves and see what it is we do, and kind of not identify with everything that it is that we do, and create that space so that we can kind of just see what we get up to as human beings, and kind of not be led by it, and it is the sitting, isn't it? For me too, it was the sitting that changed everything, because that's the space, that's the key, that's where the gold is.
Yep, exactly. Thank you. There's Joan.
Yeah. If you don't touch the button, Joan, I'll unmute you.
Okay, thank you.
There we go.
Sorry.
Hello, John Eric. It's wonderful to see you and hear your path. And I have a couple of questions, and one is about Hakomi,
Mm-hmm.
because during the pandemic, I haven't been attending anything really. And when I was, and people talked about Hakomi, I thought, I'm too old and it's too intensive. I can't take on something like counseling or a separate practice of Hakomi. And so I think I've let that go by. What do you have to say for someone who is, I'm 85 years old. My practice is being with my husband who has health issues. We live in a good community, but we're really on our own, and I don't know whether I'll go anywhere from here.
Yeah. Well, first, I'm just so glad to see both of you. It has been a while.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen you. Really, Hakomi, the root of it is loving presence, which is what we feel together. Like the practice discussion group that we were in for so long together with Flint and in his office, like we were doing Hakomi, and it could be just as simple as just being with each other. Like there's nothing that has to happen. So I would just offer that it's just a way of being with someone and just saying, I'm going to be here in presence with you and give you my full attention, my full self, and nothing else has to happen.
Well, thank you. That's really what I have felt was special about Appamada, and it isn't everywhere else. They'll tell you that other Zen groups or Zen centers don't have this kind of a community. But anytime I've been in a group with people at Appamada, it has been really personally important sharing. So I continue with that, but I'm thinking my practice as far as studying or growing, I don't know. I don't see it. Just being present now is all I have.
Yeah.
Thank you for your offerings.
Thank you. Thanks for stepping forward and being present with us.
Before Joel, can I just check if Laurie had raised her hand?
I did, yeah. John Eric, I just wanted to thank you so much for this talk. It's always wonderful to see somebody here in the Zendo when you talk and you have experience with them, but knowing the particulars of your whole journey has just been wonderful to listen to. So I really appreciated it, and your openness to so many different traditions. I thought is just great to have that kind of experience. So anyway, thank you so much.
Thanks, Lori. Yeah, I didn't know what to expect from this. I just I had like 5 bullet points. I was like, I don't know what else there is, and it just kept growing and growing.
And I'll bring Joel down next beside you.
Hey, Joel.
Eric, thank you so much for this talk. I'm just impressed by what Laurie just pointed to, your openness throughout the journey. That speaking for myself, I'm a person that came to Zen with a very fixed idea, which was that there was something wrong with me and that I needed help fixing that stuff that was wrong with me. And what the practice has done for me is to just help me open up and help me connect with other people and help me connect with traditions and so on that I didn't know about before. And but I just think it's inspiring that there's a consistent line in your practice from working in a pet store at 11 and being fascinated with animals, having spiritual connection with an armadillo, and meeting people from all sorts of traditions, and just being open and wanting to know what you can learn and how it can help you connect. Always, just like E.M. Forster said, only connect, only connect. That's what I hear in you. That's a beautiful thing. So thank you.
And if you're wondering what that noise is, it's Joel's fan. Please do just give me a wave if you're not sure how to raise your hand. Oh, we have Robin.
Hi, John Eric. I just wanted to offer my appreciation. Serving on the board with you and just being on council together more recently, I knew some of your story because we had gone on a walk and talked together some time ago, but I'd never heard it all like kind of in order. And so I appreciate that. But even more, I appreciate how during this time of really unfathomable change, you led the board and the nonprofit organization that's Appamata, and you did so with such grace, good humor, patience, and I want to say not with perfection, because I think that's important for us all to know. We didn't always know the right thing. We just did what seemed to be the thing that might be the right thing. And your ability to sort of move with all of that without at least sharing, your own frustration or doubt or self criticism, or just your, in the Suzuki Roshi book, Beginner's Mind, in the introduction, there's a quote by Trudy Dixon that means so much to me, that actually Tom Vandestat, he used to practice with us, but who moved to Tulsa, pointed out once in one of Flint's groups. And she's describing, one assumes Suzuki Roshi, but she's describing just a Roshi. She's describing basically a teacher. And what she's really describing is not what we aspire to as Zen students, because like, good luck with that. But what naturally happens through practice, not 24/7. It's not like you're the golden Buddha, but also the way that one feels in the presence of that person. And I invite anyone to go check that out, because it is just such a beautiful passage. But I just want you to know that I have felt that with you, and I have such gratitude. And it sounds like from chats, I'm speaking for so many people. So thank you, and keep going, and keep coming back. It works.
Thank you so much, Robin.
And I'd just like to read out a couple of chats that people have had to leave but would like their voice heard. And Clayton has said, "Thank you, John Eric, and all of you Sangha members. This was remarkable. I must leave you, and with much appreciation and love." And Claudine says, "Thank you so much, John Eric. It was a very inspiring moment."
Thanks to them, Clayton and Claudine.
Jessica.
May you hear a cat in the background? Sorry about that if so. John Eric, I had to say thank you for telling your story so beautifully with such sincerity. I've been there for some of it. I've been lucky enough to witness some of it, but I cried twice. It was just so sweet. to hear it all, you know, I guess I'm just kind of echoing what some others have said, to hear it all kind of laid out like that. And I want to thank you for your sincere heart.
And we have Monica. I think this might be the last one because we're running over, but I'll let Laurie.
We have one more person in the Zendo, if that's okay, after Monica.
Okay, thanks, Laurie.
Thank you.
There we go. Yeah, John Eric, it was just really wonderful to hear about your, you know, your journey, your spiritual journey. Really thank you for that. It really is a wondrous journey, and I hope you continue to have a wondrous time.
Yeah, and I, you know, it was like, as you said, Robin said, it was wonderful working with you on the board. You are so open and listen to everybody and make wonderful decisions. And again, I think it's part of your acceptance of everything that goes around. So really appreciate it. Thank you.
It's good to see you both. I just want to say, Jessica, I didn't say anything back, but because I just have no words for say, sharing this journey with you.
Missy has a question or has a comment.
Yes. Can you, I hope you can hear me. Hi, John Eric, this is Missy. I'm so glad to be here and here. I was late getting here, but I'm so glad to have gotten to hear what all I did here. And I'm one of John Eric's Hokami students, and I've only been twice, but it has already made a big impact on my life, John Eric. So thank you, and thank you for today.
Thank you, Missy. This has been quite a practice for me. I've never seen my story laid out like this before either.
And Joel wanted an add-on comment of, he said, what I meant to say but forgot is that your openness brings forth the best in the people you meet. And I think that's a wonderful place to finish.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, everybody, for being here with me, continuing to be here with me.
Thank you so much, John, and we'll hand John Eric and we'll hand back over to Laurie in the Zendo.
Thank you, John Eric.
Thank you.